Hey everyone, welcome to the Power Connection broadcast. My name is Bobby Umar, and with me I have Herman Chan. Hello, Herman. Welcome.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for having me.
Delighted to have you. And for those who are just joining us on this call, my name is Bobby Umar, and I share a lot of content around leadership and career progression, personal branding, and entrepreneurship. And I do a weekly, actually twice a week broadcast called the Power Connection every Monday and Wednesdays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And often I'll bring in some really fabulous guests to actually, supplement my knowledge and add their own incredible insights around who they are and what they do. And today, actually, Herman's going to talk about real financial planning. What does that really mean? What does that mean, real financial planning versus the not so real or the fake or whatever it is you want to call it? I'll let Herman kind of explain that. And I think, it's an important, relevant topic because, we're all kind of thinking about our finances today, given what's going on with COVID and working from home and pivoting our careers. I talk a lot about how people are trying to pivot their brands and their companies and their careers. And so personal branding is a huge part of it. But the part that I don't talk about, which is where you can add a lot of value, is the idea around financial planning and real financial planning. Now, if you are just joining us, again, a couple of guidelines. We want people to be part of this broadcast. So this is a chance for you to ask questions. So please comment on questions below. If you have any questions for Herman or anyone else, even myself, comment below. Sarah's already said, hey, Bobby, hey, Herman, great. That's what we want. Comment below. Let us know where you're from. Are you from North America, South America, Asia, Africa, Australia, Europe? Share that as well. If you like what you're hearing, you can clap, like, heart, light bulb, smiley face. You can actually tag people in the conversation. You can share this on your own pages so people can get the value from the conversation. This is what we want. Share is here. Hey, hello. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us. So join in, engage, ask lots of questions. Okay, that's really what we want. So let's get right into it. And Herman, why don't you tell people a little bit about who you are, your story, and how you came to be such a magnificent, fantastic person I know you are today.
Thanks, Bobby. Well, where do we begin? Let's go a little
I
backwards
was
here.
a young babe of 18 months.
So I'll go a little backwards. We'll start off by saying that currently I am a certified financial planner. It's a global designation. Don't know how many there are around the world, but there's about 19,000 or so here in Canada. I currently am talking to you today, Bobby, from my basement in Richmond Hill, Ontario, just north of Toronto. I'm a certified financial planner. I'm also a fee-only financial planner, which there aren't too many of those folks in this country. At the same time, I'm also a regional director for Canada Life, which is actually one of the largest financial insurance companies in the country as well as North America. Other than that, father of two, trying to spend a little bit more time when I'm not social distancing and when I'm not working from this basement, trying to play a little golf and trying to get better at that. So.
And how did you end up actually, going down this path of financial planning?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It actually started back when I got my first part-time job,
Okay.
and my father at the time was reading The Wealthy Barber by David Chilton.
Right.
And then he told me to read it, told me to follow some of those, basic personal finance lessons that have stuck with me to this day.
Wow.
But of course, I took a big detour because I was actually had aspirations of working in sports media. Ended up going to school in Ottawa. Went to Carleton, graduated with a degree in journalism. Never ended up using it, but I was fortunate to have the opportunity to actually interview Vince Carter, who, because of this COVID
Wow.
situation, he just retired unceremoniously, right? So
Yes.
I was able I had a chance to talk to him. I had a chance to talk to the former commissioner, David Stern. Rest in peace, David Stern. He passed away not too long ago. At least I got a taste of that life. And sitting courtside in the press row. It was actually for a preseason game. Back in to date myself a little bit, that was back in 2000. From there, I had a long career, in my opinion, anyways, a long career in retail management. And then one day I woke up and I said, I got to change my life, change my career. I ended up going to a job fair downtown here in Toronto.
Wow.
And I got my foot in the door with HSBC back in 2007. So that was my foray into the financial industry, and the rest is history. I've been representing this organization now for over 9 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it's always interesting to see how you've pivoted and shifted along the way, which I think is great. Going to the topic of financial planning. I mean, first tell me what does it mean by real financial planning? And again, those who are on the call, ask questions about if you have any questions about financial planning and how you're dealing with finances. Maybe Herman, you can even ask some questions that you want them to answer as well. But let's just start with the first thing because I like how you position it. What is real financial planning?
Sure. What real financial planning to me is really figuring out what somebody's goals are and figuring out their time horizons, and making sure that it touches all the bases, right? So what are some of the bases? The first one is actually positive cash flow, which has been a big challenge during this COVID lockdown and this global pandemic. So trying to help people out with that first and foremost. Once they have that figured out or they're on the right track, then we can look at risk management strategies. And for the lack of a better term, it's insurance, right? This is something that a lot of people have heard about it, don't know too much about it. Most people don't even know where to begin. So it's making sure that, there is potentially some cash flow coming in if there is a financial or a health emergency. Then we look into helping people with investment management. Which is, reviewing portfolios, making sure that, there's certain financial goals and they're working towards them and they're on track or they're not on track. And then after that, you would look into retirement planning. And that's a popular topic as well. And then after that, it's, looking at everything from a tax perspective or tax saving or tax sheltering or tax mitigating perspective. And then at the same time, or maybe further on down the road, depending on the person or the couple, estate planning, okay. Right? COVID once again has a lot of people, starting to really think about, what happens if something happened to me? What would I want, these assets to go? Who are these? Where would I want these assets to go to? Is there a charity or a cause that I really believe in? Maybe I can do something about it now and not wait, 20 years later or 30 years later. So real financial planning encompasses all this stuff, right, as well as actually implementing some of these strategies. And that's the key. I've noticed over the years, Bobby, that, the term financial planning gets tossed around a lot, and right, there really isn't a clear definition. And that's what I'm trying to do today. With you, Bobby, and in your audience, is to kind of dispel some of those myths and misconceptions about financial planning. There really is a lot more to it than just, getting a better, higher rate of return and maybe, moving some money into different buckets, right?
Okay, no, I appreciate that. And Sarah just said I couldn't agree more on the insurance point. Herman is speaking my language, so that's good. People are resonating with what you're saying. So cool. I'm going to be upfront here and say that I'm actually really bad at this stuff. My dad is a tax consultant, an accountant, and he also has always impressed upon me the importance of financial planning, and I have not done a good job of it. So, which brings me to the question. I know in my head what stops me from doing a good job of financial planning. What do you think what's stopping people from putting time and energy? Like I know why people don't put time and energy into their personal brands. You can tell me why people don't put time and energy into financial planning.
For sure. Okay, so for my travels, I've been at this with this organization for 9 years, the financial industry as a whole for 13 plus. And I've worked at 3 different organizations as well, right? So from my travels, I would say that for many people, it's in the back of their minds, but life just gets in the way. Yeah. Right. And when I say life gets in the way, it could be, oh my goodness, we're about to have our first child, to, oh my goodness, we have 2. Oh my goodness, we need to figure out, do we want, spouse X to go back to work, or should we have her, maybe pursue her side hustle dreams of setting up some sort of business instead of going back to the job she could be going back to, or he could be going back to, or it could be, they've done well. They've done well in their job. They've done well in their business, and they're so busy working, in the business or working in their jobs and their busy lives that it's hard for people to take a step back, just to look at everything as a whole.
Right. So if people are stepping back or they're not able to commit the time, because you know what, life is always happening. Then there's COVID, then there's the third kid, then there's so much stuff going on, right? So I mean, so how do you encourage people to kind of get started, and what are some ways that they can deal with the overwhelm of the busyness of life?
I would say it starts with if it's a single person, trying to figure out your goals, short, medium, and long term, and just jot them down, right? If it's a couple looking to start a family, once again, try to run some of those numbers, right? Work with an accountant, or even work with a basic monthly cash flow worksheet of some sort. And I've got different tools and different free resources I can share with you, Bobby, and your audience as well. But it starts there. It starts there. And then the next the next thing that somebody could do would be to, talk to a professional. Talk to somebody that does this for a living. Talk to somebody that has, some life and work experience, and also somebody that you can work with for the long term, right? So I don't mean necessarily just going, and talking to somebody that is, got 30 years or 20 years under their belt and 4 or 5 different destinations. You want to work with somebody that you can connect with,
Right.
And really can understand your situation. So it could be somebody, fairly new in the business, or it could be somebody that, is 10, 15, 20 years in the business. It's important to find the right person. And I also encourage people to don't just talk to one person, like talk to a couple, right? And kind of figure out what is the best person for you both now and later.
You mentioned something about connection and trust, and so I think that's a very important thing. Uh, why is it so important to build trust and connection with a financial planner? And I'm assuming it's something to do with the vulnerability of money, but maybe you can expand upon that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, these are very sensitive topics, right? Like you can do a quick search, or even in passing and reading what's online these days. People are definitely way more open to talk about their political beliefs, their sports beliefs, even other more definitely way more taboo topics like sexual orientation, et cetera, et cetera. But the one thing that people don't really talk about is money.
Right.
And financial planning, which is part of the reason I guess why I'm here today.
Yeah.
I'm what I'm saying is that it's okay to talk about it. Most people don't have it figured out, and it's totally okay. What's not okay is expecting and hoping for this amazing result. A year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and not doing something about it today, because there's definitely something that everybody can do today to move one step in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful for a lot of people who are trying to figure this stuff out. What about people that maybe are fearful of just the money aspect? I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know what the cost of doing this type of stuff is. Maybe kind of shed some light on that. Is that maybe a myth? I don't know.
Hey, Bobby, that's a great question. So the good news in this industry is that people have a lot of choice, right? And especially in Canada, actually, because I've learned about different countries around the world and how they operate when it comes to financial planning. But in Canada currently, there's tons of choice, right? We got some advisors that work on a commission basis. Some advisors and planners work on a fee basis. Some strictly work on you transferring a large amount of assets. And then you get a whole bunch of different services in return and a lot more value. So there's a lot of choice there, right? And in terms of pricing, so it could range from, there's some online platforms that offer basic financial planning. That could be a couple $100. I would say $8 to $1,000 roughly for just a plan that's online based. And then you could also work with like an app company, kind of like Wealthsimple is a perfect example, right? Which is a huge, they call them robo advisors. So it's a digital app platform where you can get money management, investment management, as well as basic financial planning advice. That's bundled in their fee. Or you could talk to an advisor that does both insurance and investments. And a quick little plug for the organization I represent. We're able to help people with insurance, investments, and mortgages. You get to deal with one person, as opposed to if you want that type of advice at a bank, you'd have to talk to 3 different people.
Right.
And if you just use an app like, well, simple, you're only getting investments and that's it.
You're like the one-stop shop.
Correct, exactly. So yeah, like I said at the beginning that it's important for people to talk to a couple different professionals and see which one fits the best, right? And but no, chances are, it's definitely of course, in my opinion, I'm a little biased, but it's probably easier to share your whole life story and your plans with one person that gets everything,
Yeah.
as opposed to talking to three different people.
I remember my dad telling me years ago that he said that one of the best parts of his job of being he's a tax accountant, and one of the best parts about being his job, he's like he gets to listen to people's stories, and they share very vulnerable stories about their lives and what they're going through, and he finds it quite meaningful that they do that. Have you kind of experienced that, and how does that feel for you when you are able to help these people out?
Oh, Bob, hey, that's an awesome question, and I totally agree with what your father told you and how he's been a role model for you. Actually, coincidentally, my dad was an accountant too.
Oh, okay.
So we definitely have that in common, if not a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, for sure. I've definitely have come to the conclusion, I would say, definitely the last 6 or 7 years, that this has become my calling in life. At first, I thought, if I could just, report on amazing sporting events and get front row seats to Game 7 of a playoff final, I've made it, and that was my mark on society. But I've realized over the last number of years that I can make a much bigger impact from doing what I'm doing now, attracting more people that want to do what I'm doing. Yeah. And also share this advice with your audience, Bobby. There's a lot of information out there right now, and it's important that people have trusted sources and trusted resources to go to. Bobby, you've done a great job of getting great guest speakers on your shows and content on all your different channels. And this is my lane, and I think the general public can definitely benefit a lot from just getting real financial planning.
And I love how you said that you thought about, I want to be the broadcaster about sporting events, be in the front lines of that, and versus now you love what you're doing. It's something we talk about in branding, which is there's one part which is impact, which everyone wants, and maybe you'll be impactful by being that broadcaster who's famous and all that, and you get that excitement. But then there's that alignment piece, which is where meaning comes in, and when you start creating stuff that's meaningful, it's actually quite powerful. As a speaker, I'm on stage in front of 1,000 people. I'm fueled. I'm energetic. I love it. I love the crowd. But where I find true meaning is when I actually talk to that one person and I realize that it impacted them in a really profound way. So I think it's really cool that you kind of brought that up in terms of how you can actually create that impact for people, which is great. We actually have Brock on the call saying, what's his name again? His name. We're with Herman Chan. We're talking about real financial planning and understanding what that entails. What are some myths about it? What firm he's from? He's from Canada Life. Is that right?
Canada Life, you got it. Yeah.
Canada Life. There you go. So, Brock, if you want to reach out to Herman, you better do it, because he seems clearly very interested in everything you're trying to say. What are some of the biggest? Actually, I want to go back to those meaningful discussions. So, you're with these people. You're one-on-one with them. They're sharing their life story. What is something that kind of hits home where they're not going to act? What's something that you're like, oh, you just wish they really knew this and could really internalize this? I'm going deep, man. I'm going meta, but seriously, what is that?
Okay. I'm just thinking of a recent situation of it was somebody that was introduced to me through an old colleague of mine. Okay. And they had met just out of pure coincidence, but it was a lady in her 60s, and we've had a number of different conversations, but at the moment she feels like she's fine. She doesn't need to do anything, but what she was saying to me actually didn't really connect with what the goal she mentioned for herself and her kids and her grandkids, right? So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't read minds. Right. But sometimes, people aren't going to be able to reach the goals that they have and fulfill some of those wishes because there's something holding them back. Now, in this particular situation, I actually don't know what's holding her back. I like to think I have some idea, and she's given me a reason or two, but I don't think that's really the case. So even though sometimes, even with my best effort in trying to uncover some of those deep feelings and some of those goals that have been shared, people are still reluctant to take that big step, because everybody has their comfort zone, right?
Yep.
So and it's very difficult for people to step out of that comfort zone.
Right.
But what I will say is, I've stepped out of my comfort zone many times over the years, and I would say every single time it's worked out.
Right.
So another message I want to share with your audience today, Bobby, is if you could push yourself to even take 1 foot outside of your comfort zone, if not both feet, generally and statistically, I think usually it works out in some way, shape, or form. Assuming that you have the resources, assuming that you are being honest with yourself and honest with the people you're asking questions and getting advice from. I mean, if in some and a lot of things that I talk about and I guide people on, they're actually not that sophisticated or complicated.
Right.
A very popular one. Maybe this will come up in the Q&A portion, but a very simple one that I've seen time and time again that people don't follow is, if you have a consistent income stream, let's just say you're a salaried employee or you have an hourly wage, save some money. Okay. Now I know the wealthy barber back in the 90s said 10%. Maybe you probably need more than 10% now, but let's say at least 10%. Put that aside, save it, and invest some of it. It is so simple, but you'd be surprised how many people that actually, A, have never heard of that, and 2, actually do it.
Right.
And it's something I've been doing since I was 22. So, yeah. So although I'm, I don't think I'm that old, but 13 years in the business. But in terms of the advice that I'm spreading out there, it's something I've been doing myself for 18 plus years.
Right. Now, I like how you talked about stepping outside of your comfort zone. I mean, there's this whole thing where there's a comfort zone. Just outside that, you step out, you have what's called the growth zone. The part where it gets out of difficult is when you push someone so far that they're not now in the panic zone, and then they get back into the comfort zone. Yeah. So it's important to find that difference between where you push people and gently nudge them along. Now, we've talked about other myths. Are there any other myths or things that you want to address that people need to understand when it comes to real financial planning?
A couple off the top of my head.
Sure.
Insurance is really expensive, and usually it's out of somebody's reach, even in their 20s and 30s and 40s. So that's a big myth for sure, because there's so many different options when it comes to insurance. So that's one. Another one is most work benefits. So people that have a good job and their company provides some sort of benefit, typically that they're still paying a large chunk. So they may think that the company's covering everything. In most cases, the company's not. And also, a lot of those plans are okay. They're not really as good as one may think if you actually take some time and study it. So I do a lot of benefit reviews with people when I interact with them and engage with them, and then I just remind them, hey, look, you thought you had this, but you actually have this, and it's like way lower than what you thought, right?
Right.
So that's another one. The other one is sometimes people don't need double-digit returns to reach the goals that they have.
Right.
And even if you are getting high returns, if you're not saving enough for the goal that you've got in a certain time frame, it doesn't matter. Even if you're getting 20% returns, you're still not going to reach your goal.
Okay. Now,
so I would say those are some of the more common ones for sure.
Yeah, and sorry, just a side question. The stuff that you covered, does it also cover things like RRSPs and RESPs?
Yeah. So we would look at all those different type of accounts, right? So. Okay. And for people that have relatives that that may be, or children that may be disabled here in Canada, there's a program called the RDSP, which a lot of companies actually don't even support. So fortunately, we're one of the organizations that do support that. So
sorry, what is that one?
RDSP, Registered Disability Savings Plan.
Oh, okay.
So those are for people that are actually on disability and confirmed with the governments. So there's extra grant money. This is a federal program that came out about 11 years ago. So
okay, good to know. That's good to know. So I have to ask a question because my wife always asks me this question, which is, when it comes to RSPs and RESPs and mutual funds, or even just getting insurance, her take is not always to go to the banks, and to go to like, I guess individuals that help you with, and brokers and things like that.
Yes.
What's your take on that? I mean, in terms of, because I don't know what I don't know what the pros and cons of each one are.
Yes. No, that's a very, very common question. As I mentioned at the beginning, that there's so many different type of advisors that exist out there in the Canadian landscape. If somebody just wants to get a full, I like to call it a full physical, because I really compare the role of a planner, a financial planner, as or a holistic financial advisor as like a family doctor.
Okay.
Right? They do a full physical on you, and then if you got something like this, they're going to send you off to this specialist and that specialist, right? So very, very similar in that case, in that sense. So it really depends on what you're going to do, right? So if you feel like you need all sorts of different things, probably a good idea to talk to a certified financial planner first, and then kind of figure out where to go after that. And there are also folks out there that are both a certified planner as well as being licensed. So I'm one of those types of people. And there's a lot of others out there like that as well, right? So it's just important to get that plan first, to figure out what you need. Now, if you already know what you need and you got a piece that's missing, then yes, talk to a professional in that space, right? And I recommend at least talking to two, right? Just so you can see if your values match with their values, and the way you want to be served is the same way they operate, right? So,
yeah, no, I appreciate that. We're talking with Herman Chan, who and we're talking about the real financial planning and the value of it and the myths around it and what it's all about. He's sharing some really great insights on financial planning. And if you have any questions about that, by all means, comment below, let us know what they are. Sarah is saying that 100% to what you're saying. So many people think companies cover a lot of insurance needs. A lot of young families and business owners should have a top-up policy that covers the rest of their needs. That's great. It looks like she's also kind of in the same field. I don't even know what that means. So maybe can you expand upon what she means by a top-up policy?
It could be, if you've got some coverage, like I said, through work, like a work package, that you get something that complements what you already have.
Okay.
Or if you're a business owner, whether you're sole proprietor or you're incorporated, and you've got some employees, there are individual plans, but there are also like group plans as well. Okay. Actually, that's another myth, Bobby. You asked me about myths, right, in our industry.
Yeah.
Industry. You mentioned myths about our industry. So another myth is, for business owners, incorporated business owners that have, 2 employees, 5 employees, 8 employees. A lot of times they think I need at least, 20, 30 people in my company, and then I can entertain that idea of, offering benefits, right? That's actually not true. So there are companies out there that will offer benefits with as little as like you and one other employee.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely a lot of options out there, but once again, there's a lot of choice in Canada. And it's so important to talk to somebody that you trust that has an understanding about all these different moving pieces and moving parts to kind of figure out what the right plan is for you, right? Yeah, a lot of options for sure.
Okay. And we actually have another question from Sarah, who says, I have a question actually. What are the fiduciary responsibilities of a CFA?
CFP?
It's a CFA. I'm not sure. Maybe she's from the U.S., but I'm not sure. But
okay, well, the CFP exists in the U.S. as well, and a whole bunch of other. I mean, the CFP is global. That's the designation that I have. Okay. I'm not too sure about the CFA designation because that's the financial analyst one.
Okay.
But speak on behalf of the designation that I hold.
Sure.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a long list of ethics and codes that one must follow in working with clients, and there's actually a big long document that people need to sign off on as well. Basically shows that I'm committed to providing advice and service that fits your needs first and foremost. Okay. But in terms of the term fiduciary duty, that was something that was getting some steam down south. Here in Canada, it's actually very limited to. Top of my mind, I think there's only 2 roles in Canada that have that sort of sworn fiduciary duty in our business. That's if you're a portfolio manager. So it's a special designation for people that can basically trade stocks and bonds freely for a high net worth client.
Got it. Okay.
So that's one. And then, of course, the accountants and lawyers in Canada have that duty as well. So
gotcha. Okay.
In the rest of the financial industry, it's a little bit more spread out because there's so many different subgroups.
Right.
There isn't one single direction, right? So
Okay. So given that right now a lot of people are losing their jobs, or they're trying to pivot, or they're trying to build a side hustle. I mean, what are some of the things that you're going to suggest people do in terms of navigating this uncertainty when it comes to their finances?
yeah, no, great question. The first thing I would say is that for those that are still working, try to maybe cut down some expenses. Maybe revisit your monthly cash flow. Obviously our entertainment options are limited now, right? So that's part of it. And travel is also limited as well. For those that are in a tougher spot and maybe collecting on CRB and some of those government programs that are available. And for your audience that's down south, I know there's a program down there as well. I just don't know the specifics. But try to take care of the most pressing needs, whether it's a roof over your head, food in the fridge. But try to skimp on other things if possible. Right. And for the people that are in a good situation, try to have some cash set aside. Right. One of the old rules of thumb in financial planning is making sure that you've got at least 3 to 6 months of cash set aside, which has become very difficult over the last decade, I would say, because there's so many things that are begging for us to spend money on. And for those that check, Instagram or Facebook on a regular basis, I mean, we're all getting bombarded with, ways to spend our money, including money that we may not have to spend. A lot of different competing priorities, right? So, try to put some cash aside. If you're in better shape, and that way you can potentially take advantage of some opportunities that may come up in the near future.
What I find really difficult though is that when I look at my financial portfolio, I'll see like mutual funds and RASPs. I'll also see debt with a credit card debt or a credit line and things like that. And so it's hard for me to envision putting away something when I'm trying to navigate things. I have savings over here, I have debt over here, and then now you're saying, given what I'm making, I put some of it away to because my initial instinct is, well, I need to pay off the debt, or maybe put some into the RSPs. Like, I find it really hard to kind of navigate that. So any sort of thoughts on that? Because I find it really confusing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's definitely not easy. I'll just call it out. It's definitely not easy. It's definitely not easy for sure.
So I need someone like you.
But what I will say is, you got to look at the interest rates on certain debt, right? So there's still that school of thought where, I got to pay down my mortgage faster because, the faster I'm mortgage free, the more I can take advantage of other things. But by the time you do that, you may be in your late 40s or early 50s. So then you don't have much time left if you want to achieve that financial freedom at 60 or 65. Right. So, what another, I guess, a piece of advice I can share freely on this call is, depending on your mortgage rate, it may not be wise to pay that down quicker, right? Because the rate that you're getting is actually the return you're going to get on your money. So if your rate's 2.5, you're getting a 2.5 return, right? Whereas, maybe you could use that extra cash towards some emergency funds, or, put it into an investment on a biweekly or monthly basis. Right. Gotcha. And just using the recent market volatility as an example, the markets fell hard. The big date was March 23rd. So if you're wondering in the last little while, when was the bottom? It was March 23rd. And both the Canadian and the American stock markets have rebounded massively. Now, I'm not going to comment on what's going to happen in the future, because I think we're due for one more big drop. But depending on who you talk to, everybody's going to have a different opinion.
It's come back to where it dropped. Is that what you're saying?
It's not too far off. It's not too far off. It's crazy. It's so crazy. Yeah. But for those that made a rash, quick decision during that free fall, now they're going to pay the price.
Right. I remember getting a letter from my from the mail, and it was my son's RESP, and it said that it dropped 16%. And I was like, whoa! And and then what kind of also floored me was that not only was it 16%, but the entire 10 years of having the RSP had now gone down to 0.6%. I was like, oh man, this sucks. 10 years down the tubes, but it probably recovered really fast, and now it's probably okay. I think you might be.
Hey, Bobby, you might be okay again. So
okay. That's good.
But the key there for everybody listening is that you really need to figure out when you need that money.
Right.
Right. So if you needed that money, like now, then you probably shouldn't have invested that way in January and February.
Yeah.
But if you know that you don't need the money until 8, 10, 12, 13 years from now,
right.
There's enough time there for it to bounce back. And I'm just talking based on history, right? And what the markets have done over the past 8, 9 decades.
I appreciate that. That's great. Well, listen, Herman, I appreciate your time today on the call. Where can people reach out to you if they want to ask you more questions or want to connect with you?
Yeah, no, I love interacting with people from all sorts of backgrounds, not just locally, but across the country and even internationally as well. I'm so curious. I'm so curious about so many different things. I always want to understand not only how the world works, but what's the world thinking at any given moment. To better support my clients, my colleagues, and my team. So yeah, no, anybody can reach out to me through Twitter at Herman H. Chan. Right. You can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn, not as much as you, Bobby, but I'm definitely on as much as I can. LinkedIn is great as well. I would say let's stick to social media. I really enjoy more impromptu dialogue, answering questions off the cuff. I think I've although I'm not even probably halfway through my career, but I've learned a lot over the years. I've had great mentors. I've had great support. I've had great training, and I've just been eternally curious.
Right, that's great. And if anyone's watching this broadcast, watching the replay, you can even go to the replay in the comments section. You can ask questions there. You can tag Herman. You can tag me. You're welcome to ask questions anytime, and we hope you'll join us. So thanks, everybody, for joining us for the Power Connects broadcast every Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. I'll be here on Wednesday again at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time talking to Cameron Harold. That'll be a fun conversation. And Herman, reach out to him. He's a great guy. He's very engaging. He loves people. He loves to chat, and I just really appreciate your time, Herman, and your expertise. So thanks so much for joining us.
Were there any other questions before we wrap it up, Bobby?
Yeah,
or is that it?
Yeah, well, I'm looking. I don't see any other questions. Sarah's saying, great chat, Bobby. Thanks so much. Thanks, Herman. So, I mean, the people are just saying thank you. People may ask questions afterwards, which is totally fine, and they can put them on the post. They can tag us. But for now, that's all we got. So thanks again, Herman. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. It was fun. And, hey, I'd be open to doing it again. So
lovely. All right, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Take care.
See ya.